if I could ask you please, on what date will your department take control of the Community Specialist Disability Functions, CDNT, the Children's Disability Network teams, and if you could give me the information?
Thanks, Deputy. So in announcing the formation of government, as you know, the Taoiseach announced his intention to have the coordination of disability-related issues handled by a senior minister for the first time, and the location of disability equality policy, which had previously been in justice, and specialist community-based disability services in health in a single department will facilitate strategic policy development, including implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that Ireland ratified in 2018, as well as the very significant reforms envisaged under the Transforming Lives programme. Under the Convention and following the transfer of the equality function, my department is both the national focal point and the coordinating mechanism for implementation of the UNCRPD, and consolidation of the disability function represents a significant opportunity to further the progressive realisation of the Convention in Ireland. It's a really significant transfer of functions, both from the point of view of improving services for persons with disability, but also from the perspectives of both departments. My priority has always been to ensure that that transfer can happen in a seamless and an effective way, so that services are maintained and enhanced, and that all the appropriate governance and financial arrangements are properly put in place. At this time, our two departments were working with the Department of Public Expenditure and the HSE. We're finalising the financial governance elements, and those were the final elements that need to be addressed. And we will look to be bringing forward a memo shortly to government to finalise and provide that date. As I say, it's a really significant transfer of functions. There's a budget of 2.4 billion transferring from health to my department, responsibility for so many crucial services, whether it's residential services, the community disability network teams. All of those will continue to be operated by the HSE, but the accountability element will be within my department. It's taken too long. It has taken too long, and we all recognise that, but we are close to the end of that process now, and close to the situation where it will fully transfer to my department.
Margaret Harcourt.
Thanks, Minister. And look, at everything you've said as to why we're doing this, I concur with. The reality is that it's hugely disappointing, as it was muted to happen last July and then September. And the way I found out that it hadn't happened was that your department appeared in front of the Public Accounts Committee, and I was informed that they weren't any nearer to it because there was still things to be ironed out. And I think I met last week with the CHO5, which is obviously they're containing the CDNT network within my area. They're actually hemorrhaging staff from their own section because of the lack of organisation. The thing I keep hearing is there's no issue with funds. And like it's not an extraordinary thing to hear that there's no issue with funds, but we don't have the staff. But the staff that we do have within the CHO5 have come to the conclusion that the CDNT just doesn't work on the ground. And that's very concerning. Very, very concerning, because there are a myriad of problems. For a start, the staff are actually being hemorrhaged because the parents who are on waiting lists of up to 3 years. Sorry, am I out of time? Oh, excuse me, I'll continue, Chair.
I share your frustration, and as you're on the Public Accounts Committee, and one of the key reasons that this has gone slowly is after this transfer, for the first time, the HSE will be reporting to two masters. It will be accounting for 20 billion of their budget to health and accounting for 2.4 billion to our department. And I want to be able to ensure that in next year's budget, if myself and Minister Rabbitte get an extra 50 million for getting people out of residential or the like, I want to be able to ensure that I can see where that money goes within the HSE and where we get the outcome, the delivery for it. And you know, on public accounts, you want to see that too. And the problem is, up to this point, it hasn't been clear how that line of sight is put in place. And we want to put in place that line of sight, so when myself and Minister Rabbitte advocate for those improvements, we can see the delivery. It is slower. I share your frustration, but I do believe we're close to achieving that, and we will see that transfer soon. I'll speak about CDNTs maybe in my next reply, because I know that's important to you.
Yeah, well, I think particularly I have an issue, a mother of 3 children, all of whom are autistic. One is very severe. He's only 11. She's the mother of 15-year-old twins, but the 11-year-old is essentially ruling the roost. This same parent is a lone parent now. She needs coordination of all the services, but there's actually nothing. She doesn't have anybody she should have a coordination officer dealing with 3 children. She has CDNT, she has CAMS, she has TUSLA, she has doctors, but she's engaging with none because she neither has the energy, the mental capacity, because her 11-year-old is by far in excess of need of services, and she's not getting them, and it's the CDNT are not able to provide them. So there's a complete failure in the system, and my concerns are not about money, because their concerns are not about money. It's about staff to provide the services, and it doesn't hold that there's no concern about money, because if we were paying enough, Minister, we'd have the staff. It's as simple as that. Now, it may not be quite as simple as that, but it should be.
Margaret Harlow.
You're correct, staffing is a key issue, but I also think engagement with parents, and in terms of how that relationship is managed between the HSE and parents, because in far too many areas, whether it's in Wexford, whether it's in Dublin 15, that has become an intensely confrontational, because parents have become so frustrated because they have been let down, and we need to change that. And that's why Minister Rabbitte and myself have been working on this PDS roadmap, recognising that CDNTs are in place, recognising in parts of the country they're working, but in other parts they are not working, primarily because of the staffing issues. And that's why Minister Rabbitte and I, but particularly led by Minister Rabbitte, has been prioritising how we can get staff in the short term, but also in the long term, in terms of how do we have a better supply of OTs, of SNLs, of psychologists coming in. That's about looking at college places, looking at master's courses, but in the short term, getting these skills on the critical skills list was a really important step by Minister Rabbitte, getting recognition of some UK and I think Welsh and Northern Irish qualifications, so people can get their foreign qualifications recognised here so they can actually practice here, and all of that will be set out in the roadmap.
Margaret Harlow, Ms. Pugman Roigidi, Kate Castella, Ivra Shaska Shockton, Anam Takta, Pa Daly.
Minister, the question is, what are your views in relation to HICWA inspections of IPAS contracted properties, and whether you'd make a statement in relation to it? But the context of this is the rapid expansion of such properties, given the massive increase in international protection applicants and also temporary protection directive holders arriving in the country.
Thanks very much. So a commitment was made in the programme for government to replace the current system of accommodation for international protection applicants with a new model based on a not-for-profit approach. And as you know, I published the white paper to end direct provision in February of last year. And this white paper outlines the new model of accommodation, but in particular the supports that will be offered to international protection applicants. And it was the result of very extensive engagement across government, across state agencies, but also with former residents of direct provision and the NGOs active in that sector. It's the government's intention that HICWA will monitor international protection accommodation service centres against national standards as part of the transitional arrangements for the move to the new model. And it's important that compliance with the national standards should be measured through on-site assessment. So independent monitoring is a vital tool for the adequate provision of accommodation supports, and this will enable the government to critically evaluate the current state of play and make informed improvements as needed. And HICWA's experience and expertise in the areas of inspection is extensive, so that's why we chose them. Ahead of commencing inspections of all permanent centres, HICWA will conduct a series of pilot inspections, and it's envisaged that the first of these pilot inspections will take place before the end of this year, and that will begin the process of HICWA, I suppose, building up its own expertise in terms of how an inspection of international protection accommodation centres will begin, and looking for the full rollout of the programme from early next year. So pilots this year, and full rollout early next year. We've been engaging very extensively with HICWA over the last number of years. They wanted additional budget, additional staff to undertake this additional role. That's all been secured, and we've also worked with the Office of the Attorney General, ensuring there's a clear legal base for these inspections to take place. In the meantime, as you know, centres continue to be inspected 3 times a year, twice by officials from my department, and at least once by QTS, our independent inspectorate company.